there's a monster hiding in the remote forests, swamps, and rivers of the Congo Basin in Central Africa. It has a long neck, looks like a dinosaur, and is the size of an elephant, or maybe a hippo at least. That's what people who claim to have seen it say. It should have gone extinct millions of years ago, but this Congo's version of the Loch Ness Monster somehow survived. This creature is the Mokele-Mbembe, which means one who stops the flow of rivers, and more folks are saying they've seen it lately. European explorers first heard the stories of this creature from the people living near the Congo River in the early 1900s. A German captain even included a description of the monster in his official report from his expedition. The locals told him the animal was of a brownish-gray color with smooth skin, a very flexible neck, and only one long tooth that could be a horn. Some of them mentioned a long, muscular tail, like that of an alligator. They also said that the creature lived in the caves, but climbed the shores even in the daytime to find some plants to eat. Locals also believed its favorite snack was a kind of liana with large white blossoms. Some of them even showed the German captain some fresh path the monster left leading next to those plants. And they warned him that Mokele-Mbembe definitely didn't like humans and took down any canoe that would sail nearby. Dinosaurs were a real hit in pop culture in the 1910s, and several newspapers in Europe and North America wrote about the dino-like monster from Africa back then. In the later years, several expeditions traveled to the Congo Basin to search for Mokele-Mbembe or interview claimed witnesses. They did not find any direct physical evidence, but collected many stories. One zoologist in the 1980s said he took a film of Mokele-Mbembe, but the footage did not develop properly. Stories and movies like Jurassic Park have kept the dream alive that dinosaurs might still be hiding somewhere in deep forests. At some point, people stopped reporting sightings of the creature as often, so it almost became a forgotten legend. But it all changed recently, as many people claim to have witnessed the mythical monster with their own eyes. Cryptozoologists, those fans of mysterious creatures, believe it could be a dinosaur that, for some reason, didn't go extinct, related to a brachiosaurus or a diplodocus. This idea comes from how people describe seeing the creature, with a super long neck, a huge body, and a tiny head. They think it might have stayed hidden in the deep forests of Africa all this time. But scientists say that if it really were the last living dinosaur, we would have found some real proof by now, like a photo or bones or something showing it walking around the Congo Basin. Some expeditions that are trying to find proof the monster is real have even used sonar technology to scan the murky waters of Central African rivers and lakes in search of any large, unidentified creatures. Some people even narrowed down the monster's location to a specific remote lake, surrounded by untouched jungle in the swamps. So far, the search for evidence hasn't been successful. The explanation behind all the sightings of the Mokele-Mbembe could be the changing ecosystem. More and more human settlements are moving into the huge Congo Basin rainforest. People aren't used to seeing large animals that live in the forest, so they believe they have witnessed the mysterious creature from their folklore. The human brain often fills in the gaps in something we don't know and uses imagination to explain it, especially if there's a ready-made version that everyone's heard of. But still, we can't completely rule out the possibility that there are some new, unknown species of animals hiding in the Congo forests. Maybe just not a missing dinosaur. Another legend, this time Mongolian, says there's a giant worm living deep in the Gobi Desert. Yep, similar to the monster you've seen in Dune. The creature, which is supposedly up to 6 feet long, can spit acid that could melt anything and shoot electricity. They say it spends most of its days hiding underneath the sandy dunes, but likes to come out during the wetter months of June and July. The people in the West first found out about the megaworm of the Gobi Desert thanks to an American paleontologist, Roy Chapman Andrews. This brave man was probably the inspiration for Indiana Jones. In 1926, he wrote about the creature in his book. At the meeting with Mongolian leaders, Andrews heard detailed descriptions of the creature, even though none of them had ever seen it themselves. One of them said it looked like a sausage that was about 2 feet long, with no head or legs. According to him, the worm was so poisonous that just touching it could instantly take your life, and it lived in the loneliest parts of the Gobi Desert. Andrews didn't think the creature was real, but he shared these stories again in another book. And then, stories of the monster spread around the world. In some of them, it's only 1 foot long. In others, it's as large as a human. Some say it looks like a snake, and some describe it as a caterpillar. Some people claim it has wings and can fly, and others think it could be a supernatural evil being without a body. The color of the creature also remains a subject of debate. It could be white-gray, brown, or even bright red. The stories of witnesses are probably so different because the creature doesn't even exist. In 1983, one scientist who was visiting the region heard that an old man had managed to finally catch the mysterious worm. He also found out there was a nest nearby and decided to risk it all and see it. But instead of a scary monster, there was a tartar sand boa inside. Luckily for the scientist, this snake is non-venomous, but it does have gray-brown scales and could match the description of the giant worm. When he showed it to the locals, supposedly all of them said it was the monster they had seen. Big expeditions from America, Britain, and New Zealand came to the Gobi Desert to try and find the creature. Many other adventurers came from all around the world on their own, but found no evidence the monster was real. But many Mongolians are sure the death worm is no fantasy. If you don't believe there's a monster in the Gobi Desert, how about one in Lake Worth in Texas? According to local folklore, there's a part human, part goat creature with scales and long clawed fingers hiding there. It all started back in July 1969, when locals claimed to have spotted this mysterious creature roaming around. The newspapers loved the story and started reporting about new sightings. One article said that the monster jumped out of a tree and landed on some guy's car. Another report claimed that the Lake Worth monster decided to throw an automobile tire at a group of people. Someone even managed to take a photo of the creature, and the newspapers published it. Locals started flocking to the lake at night, hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature, but no one could find any evidence it was real after all. The author of the monster's photograph later said it was most likely someone's prank, because the creature really wanted to be seen. Then, a reporter from the local newspaper received an anonymous letter saying that it was 3 high school students who decided to dress up and scare people. Even despite this, some cryptozoologists think it could have been an undiscovered primate species that walks on 2 legs. We don't know if the Worth monster is real, but it does one good thing and brings together the local community. Every year since 2009, they throw the Lake Worth Monster Bash.
This is Lolong, the largest crocodile ever found, stretching about 20 feet long. Now, imagine living in a world full of Lolongs, only with longer legs and the ability to run on land like a greyhound. It sounds like a nightmare monster, but she was real. Fossils of giant crocodile-like creatures were discovered back in the 1930s. And now, scientists have found that these beasts once roamed and dominated lands far bigger than they imagined. We're talking about the cebicids. They're a family of prehistoric crocodiles that once ruled South America, especially in what is now Argentina, Brazil, and Bolivia. And scientists discovered that these ancient predators were huge. Some species may have grown up to 20 feet long. Now, to give you an idea of how big that is, well, that would be you, and that would be her. Yeah, good luck outrunning that. Oh, by the way, they wouldn't be slithering in the water. They'd be walking right beside you. And that's actually the biggest difference between them and their crocodile relatives. Most cebicid species lived entirely on land. They were like lions, powerful, moving on all fours, but with tough crocodile-like skin. That image alone is already terrifying. But it gets worse when you figure these guys were fierce predators and we could have easily ended up as part of their dinner. Everything about them was perfectly built for the chase. They had narrow, dinosaur-like skulls and long legs that helped them sprint after their prey. They especially liked sloths and rodents, but honestly, with those sharp saw-like teeth, well, anything that crossed their path didn't stand much of a chance. And if one of their victims tried to fight back, well, that would have been a big mistake. Most of these crocodile ancestor species had tough, bony plates under their skin that worked like natural armor. They were seriously tough, but don't worry, you don't have to fear them. Luckily, for us at least, these beasts aren't roaming the earth anymore. According to Jonathan Block, a paleontologist at the Florida Museum of Natural History, these mysterious predators may have been the last of the Nodosuchians, a broad group of reptiles that first appeared back in the Jurassic period. Yep, these bad boys shared the planet with dinosaurs. That is, until the asteroid hit the Earth about 66 million years ago. Dinosaurs went kaput, and mammals took over. They became the land animals, but their path to the top wasn't exactly smooth. They still had to deal with the Sebecids in South America. That's right, those tough crocodile-like predators actually survived the asteroid disaster. They also ruled and stayed at the top of the food chain until around 11 million years ago. Or at least that's what scientists thought, until they started finding strange fossilized teeth in the Caribbean. Uh-oh. Let's go back about 30 years when researchers uncovered two roughly 18-million-year-old teeth in Cuba. They had a tapered shape and tiny sharp serrations, perfectly designed for tearing into meat. There was no mistake. Scientists were looking at something that belonged to a top predator. But the question was, who? Had they found a fossil of an ancient giant croc? Well, maybe. Those teeth could have been from a species of Sebecid, but that was strange, since scientists didn't think such large ancient predators ever lived in the Caribbean. And things got even stranger when another tooth turned up in Puerto Rico. This one even older, about 29 million years old. But there was a problem. Those teeth alone weren't enough to identify a specific animal. They needed more, so the mystery remained unsolved. Everything changed in 2023. Local work crews were building a road in the Dominican Republic when they suddenly stumbled upon ancient bones. Researchers soon realized they were looking at a fossilized tooth, but this time it came with two vertebrae. That was a big deal, because it's really hard to tell ancient crocodile species apart just from their teeth. But with those two vertebrae, things were different. Crocodile relatives with serrated teeth usually had ball and socket joints between their vertebrae. But in Sebecids, that part of the spine was flat, so that made all the difference. It was enough to confirm that the fossil from the Dominican Republic belonged to a Sebecid. And just like that, scientists discovered that this ancient predator really did live in the Caribbean. And even more surprising, they found out it was roaming around at least 5 million years before Sebecids were thought to have disappeared everywhere else. Okay, but why is finding their fossils in the Caribbean such a big deal? Or better yet, why were scientists so sure before this discovery that they didn't live there? Well, that's because this prehistoric reptile didn't like the sea. Let me explain. The Caribbean is a region in the Americas made up of islands and the surrounding coastal areas. That meant for a land-loving ancient crocodile to travel from, say, Colombia to the Dominican Republic, it would have had to swim. And I mean really swim. We're talking over 350 miles of open ocean with strong currents and rough waves. You can see why that would have been a serious challenge for a land-based Sebecid to cross, right? So, that's why scientists thought these prehistoric crocodiles could never have lived in the Caribbean. But now that researchers are finding their fossils there, they may have to find an explanation. And that is where this discovery becomes even more interesting, as it actually supports the Garlandia hypothesis. This idea first appeared in 1994. It suggests that millions of years ago, the movement of Earth's tectonic plates caused a stretch of land, now mostly underwater, to rise up in the Caribbean. This land, called the Aves Ridge, may have connected South America all the way to Puerto Rico, and then to other Caribbean islands like Hispaniola, Cuba, and Jamaica. So basically, it worked like a temporary chain of land bridges, a kind of natural highway that once allowed animals to go from South America to the Caribbean. Mammals, amphibians, and reptiles could actually walk right across instead of taking their chances at sea. The Garlandia hypothesis definitely sounds fascinating, but it's still up for debate. It hasn't been fully accepted by scientists yet, even though plenty of studies since the 90s seem to back it up. And this new discovery of a giant crocodile-like creature in the Dominican Republic could be one more important clue pointing in that direction. It's possible that many of the places where these cibicids once thrived started to disappear as the global climate cooled. Bit by bit, some of them were pushed into warmer tropical areas, until, eventually, the only places left for them to live were the Caribbean islands. This discovery lines up with something else that ecologists have observed around the world. Islands can act like museums of biodiversity, in the sense that they offer a safe place where plants and animals can keep surviving long after their relatives on the mainland have disappeared. In the case of cibicids, the difference is striking. The most recent fossils found in South America date back between 10 and 12 million years ago. But the tooth and vertebrae found in the Dominican Republic are much younger, only about 4.5 million years old. That means this island might have been the last place these giant reptiles called home. And if those serrated teeth found on other Caribbean islands also turned out to belong to cibicids, that would be huge. That would mean that these ancient crocodile-like creatures didn't just live in the Dominican Republic. They were spread across the Caribbean. And who knows, maybe we'll still find more of its fossils in places like Puerto Rico, Haiti, and Jamaica. Although the tropics are among the most biodiverse places on Earth, much of their natural history remains a mystery. Discovering a giant ancient crocodile in the Caribbean is a reminder that the world we live in today is just one chapter of Earth's long, ever-changing history. And who knows what other prehistoric crocodiles or ancient creatures are still waiting to be found beneath our feet.
Antarctica wasn't always a frozen wasteland. A long time ago, it was full of life, and 56 million years ago, something terrifying stalked its jungles. A giant, flesh-eating bird. It was around 6 feet tall and weighed as much as a lion. For millions of years, nothing could challenge it, so why did it disappear? And could there be even bigger predators still hidden beneath the ice? Paleontologists found 2 massive claw bones in Antarctica, sharp, curved, and powerful, belonging to this bird. They were dug up from the Epresian-aged rocks of Seymour Island, which means they're around 40 to 50 million years old. Their shape left no doubt. These were the so-called terror birds. Their scientific name is Forus raceti, some of the most fearsome predators to ever walk the earth. They were flightless and didn't even need wings. Instead, they could sprint at breakneck speeds, like ostriches from a nightmare. For millions of years, these birds ruled South America. But now, for the first time, their presence has been confirmed in Antarctica. No surprise here. Back then, South America and Antarctica were still connected, allowing animals to easily commute between continents. So these birds probably migrated south to adapt to life on Antarctica's prehistoric landmass. It didn't just survive here, it thrived. But at some point, this nightmare of an animal vanished. Why? Most likely because of the temperature changes. Antarctica was cooling, slowly turning into the frozen wasteland we know today. Its prey may have declined, leaving the predator without enough food. Eventually, it disappeared, leaving no descendants behind. Researchers hope that they'll find a complete skeleton eventually. They're also wondering where there might be even bigger species waiting to be discovered. Perhaps these birds evolved into a completely new Antarctic lineage. But for now, all we have are 2 giant, creepy claws. People often think that there are almost no animals or plants in Antarctica. But that's not true at all. Penguins waddle around, and forget the cute tiny ones. Antarctica used to have 6-foot-tall monsters. The emperor penguins are the largest penguin species alive today. They can dive over 1,800 feet deep and hold their breath for over 20 minutes. There were giant ancient penguins around 38 million years ago. They were the size of humans. Fossils show they had long, sharp beaks, making them terrifying hunters of fish and squid. The fish there are also absolutely fascinating. Forget giant squids. Colossal squids are nightmares even bigger. Some reach over 40 feet long with massive, super sharp beaks and eyes the size of dinner plates. Finally, orcas, the apex predators of the Antarctic Ocean. They hunt in packs, working together like a wolf pack of the sea to take down seals, fish, and even massive whales. There are even tiny plants like moss and algae, Antarctic hairgrass and pearlwort. They somehow survive against all odds. There are many other myths going on about Antarctica. For example, some people think that when icebergs break off from glaciers, they immediately start drifting straight into the open ocean until they melt. But the reality is way more chaotic. First, when an iceberg breaks off from a glacier or ice shelf, it has to deal with underwater obstacles. It can stay stuck on the seafloor for decades without moving. Then they get caught in powerful whirlpools and spin in place for months. One iceberg, a 23A, spent nearly 40 years frozen in place before finally breaking free, only to get caught in a swirling ocean vortex for another 8 months. After that, their paths are influenced by ocean currents, tides, winds, and even underwater topography. They don't just float freely. Their movements are full of literal, unexpected twists. And speaking of glaciers, another strange rumor is that some humans can't travel more than 311 miles inland in Antarctica because of an impassable ice wall, freezing jet fuel, deadly winds, and no oxygen. But this is completely false. Antarctica has been explored by planes, vehicles, and even scientists on foot. There's an entire research station sitting at the South Pole. People live there all year long. The ice wall is real, a massive ice cliff rising above the ocean. But that isn't some secret barrier, it's an ice shelf. These are thick slabs of ice that form when glaciers slowly flow off the land and spread over the ocean. Almost 3/4 of Antarctica's coastline is made up of them, but they don't form some giant ring around the world. Antarctica is one of the most extreme places on Earth, but we've conquered its challenges, and we keep learning more about it every year. That's why every year, millions of dollars are poured into keeping research stations running, protecting wildlife, and making sure the people who live there have everything they need. But where does all this money go? Well, Antarctica stations are basically small cities. There's electricity, heating, water purification, food storage, and medical facilities. The biggest station, McMurdo, is basically a town with over 1,000 people in summer. It has everything from a fire station to a gym. The South Pole Station is super deep inland, so it's one of the hardest places to supply. Getting food and fuel there requires airplanes flying thousands of miles in extreme cold. But the internet loves a good mystery. When Google Maps revealed what looked like a massive doorway in Antarctica, conspiracy theorists went wild. People joked about everything from Bigfoot's vacation home to a secret base, or even a Star Trek spaceship hangar hidden in the ice. But there's a way simpler and less exciting explanation. It's actually a grounded iceberg, a chunk of ice that got stuck in shallow water and is now slowly melting. As ice moves across the landscape, it flows around bumps and obstacles, creating odd shapes. The process of melting, breaking apart, and refreezing can carve ice into unexpected forms. Antarctica also has incredibly strong downward-blowing winds that sculpt ice into dramatic formations over time. No secret doorway, unfortunately. And speaking of doors, for years, Ushuaia, Argentina, has been called the gateway to Antarctica, the last stop before the icy continent, the place where expeditions begin. But there's another option. Punta Arenas, Chile. Let's compare them. Ushuaia is closer to Antarctica. It's the top departure point for tourists going on cruises. But no regular flights to Antarctica. No major scientific bases operating from here. It's basically controlled by the military, which refuses to allow private flights, only commercially operated ships. Yes, Punta Arenas is further from Antarctica, but 22 countries and global organizations use it as their main base. There are regular flights to Antarctica happening there every year. Private airlines can actually operate here, making it the real air connection to Antarctica. Ushuaia may have the best location physically, but Punta Arenas actually runs the show. Argentina made a huge error in picking its Antarctic airbase. Instead of setting up a simple, accessible base at sea level, they built Marambio Base, very high on rough terrain, completely impossible to reach by land. Everything has to be flown in by helicopter, making operations slow, expensive, and frustrating. For 50 years, Argentina stubbornly stuck to this bad decision, while Chile set up efficient, well-planned bases that the world now uses. If things don't change, Ushuaia will be nothing more than a tourist stop. But what's terrifying is that Antarctica seems to be returning to its past. It's supposed to be the coldest place on Earth, but something shocking happened just recently. For the first time in recorded history, temperatures in Antarctica broke 68 degrees Fahrenheit. This continent is buried under miles of ice. Usually, temperatures there can drop to minus 112 degrees. But in the winter of 2020, scientists recorded an insane 69 degrees on Seymour Island, hotter than many places in Europe at that time. Scientists believe there are several reasons for that. First, there are changes in the way heat moves around the planet's waters. Second, melting permafrost due to the planet warming. It looks like the climate is changing faster than expected. A man went for a walk not far from Buenos Aires in Argentina and found something that looked like a dinosaur egg lying in the mud. When he shared his find with his family, everyone thought it was a joke, but it was actually very real. Except it wasn't a dinosaur egg, but a glyptodont shell. These guys went extinct thousands of years ago. Some of them grew up to be the size of a small car. The Paleo-Indians, who were the ancestors of Native Americans, must have had a fun time living alongside those beasts. People keep finding similar black scaly shells, which are fossils of glyptodonts in the Americas. These creatures thrived in South America for tens of millions of years and also spread up north. They had thick armor, called a carapace, and tough, grooved teeth for eating grass. They weren't always giant, but it looks like a colder climate before the Ice Age, with open woodlands and plenty of grass, helped them evolve. It's pretty hard to hide when you're huge, so they may have developed their fused armor to protect themselves. One of the most famous types had a long tail with spikes that it used to fight other glyptodonts for territory or mates. Although they look similar, the ancient glyptodonts were really different from today's armadillos. Glyptodonts had a hard, heavy armor made of fused plates, and today's armadillos have flexible armor and can roll up into a ball to protect their soft tummies. Plus, glyptodonts ate grass using their grooved teeth, and armadillos prefer insects for lunch. But despite all the differences, recent studies of their DNA showed that glyptodonts actually belonged to the armadillo family. If you think the glyptodont was scary, just wait till you meet the giant short-faced bear. This bad guy grew to almost twice the height of Michael Jordan when it stood on its hind legs. It also weighed over 1,500 pounds, and it was able to run at the speed of over 40 miles per hour. This bear preferred meat to all other foods. Even its skull and teeth were designed for slicing through meat, and it had forward-facing eyes that gave it sharp vision. Its strong jaws and large muscles helped it crush bones to get to the nutritious marrow inside. The giant short-faced bear lived in places like Minnesota and west of the Mississippi River, all the way up to Alaska. It went after or scavenged big animals like bison, musk oxen, deer, and even ground sloths. But it eventually went extinct because its prey didn't survive the Ice Age. Today, the only living relative of the short-faced bears is the spectacled bear from South America. This guy is much smaller, about the size of a black bear, and it eats both plants and meat. Game of Thrones fans, the next one is for you. The orphaned wolf cubs adopted by the Stark family in the epic series were inspired by dire wolves. Their name translates from Latin as terrible wolf. These great uncles of modern dogs were almost 5 feet from head to tail and weighed around 150 to 200 pounds. The oldest record of the dire wolf is from 250,000 years ago. They adapted well to different conditions and lived pretty much all over North America, from as far north as Alaska to down into southern Mexico. They went extinct around 10,000 years ago, soon after the last ice age. They most likely just lost their source of food. The closest we have to dire wolves now is the gray wolf, but don't get too upset. Scientists think they could be able to bring the dire wolf back to life. They can combine intact straps of their DNA, recovered from the museum specimens and the genome of modern dogs. One animal you definitely wouldn't want to be on the de-extinction program is the saber-toothed cat. This bad guy lived in prehistoric North America and parts of South America. And nope, it's not related to modern tigers or other cats. It just went extinct. It had the title of the most fearsome Ice Age predator for a long time, until scientists found out at least one species of it was more like a kitty cat. Smilodon, by the way, Diego from Ice Age was one of those, could only chomp down with 1/3 of the force of modern lions, but it could open its mouth at a 120 degrees angle, and it could wrestle even large prey to the ground with its powerful body, with disproportionately thick front legs and strong neck. The kitty was probably just too afraid to use its long and narrow teeth that could break easily. And one more detail. It had to have lips that could stretch well for the jaws to open wide, so it most likely drooled like a St. Bernard. Well, at least their teeth grew twice as fast as those of modern lions, and fully formed by the age of 3. The giant beavers, called castoroids, must have grown at the same rate, or so to get as big as a couch. They were about 8 feet long and weighed 200 pounds, which is as heavy as a large refrigerator. They had huge 6-inch long front teeth for gnawing, a narrow tail, and long, shaggy fur. This giant creature lived alongside mammoths and saber-toothed tigers in the woodlands of North America. Like today's beavers, the giant beaver probably spent a lot of time in the water since it was too heavy to move quickly on land. Unfortunately, we don't know for sure if giant beavers built equally giant dams. Even if they did, none of those structures survived over time. Some people think a giant beaver built a 4-foot-tall dam in Ohio, but it's just a guess. Eventually, the giant beaver disappeared, just like other big animals from the last ice age. Early human settlers in North America may have sped up its extinction, as they probably liked its thick fur and meat. By the Ice Age, mastodons, some remote offsprings of the early elephants from Africa, crossed a land bridge that once connected Siberia and Alaska and made it to North America. Mastodons, like woolly mammoths, had thick, shaggy fur that helped them keep warm in the cold climate of the Ice Age. But unlike the mammoths, who mostly grazed, mastodons were mostly browsers. They like to eat leaves from shrubs and the lower branches of trees. Scientists often find woolly mammoth fossils together, which means they probably lived in groups, like family herds. Mastodon fossils are usually lying alone. This means they may have preferred living on their own and only came together to mate or for a short time with their young. Sadly, both mastodons and woolly mammoths went extinct around 11,000 years ago, not long after the Ice Age. Scientists think this may have happened because of changes in weather patterns, fewer food sources, and possibly early humans. They figured out that one mastodon could feed a tribe for a week and dress them for years. You can mostly find camels in deserts in places like North Africa and the Middle East now. But scientists believe they actually came from North America, especially the lands west of the Mississippi River. Fossils show that camels appeared on Earth about 44 million years ago. In 2015, a team of scientists from the University of Louisiana discovered the bones of a giant ancient camel in Oregon. This camel was between 12 and 14 feet tall, like a modern giraffe. It lived around 7 million years ago and had a long neck to help it reach high plants. About 6 million years ago, some early camels crossed into Asia over the Bering Strait land bridge. Once they arrived in Asia, these camels split into two types we know today: the Bactrian camel with 2 humps and the dromedary camel with 1 hump. You won't find wild camels in North America anymore, but some of their relatives, such as llamas, alpacas, and guanacos, still live in South America.
Australia used to have its own giants. Those were huge animals that could have dwarfed anything living on this continent these days. Scientists found the remains of many of those ancient creatures in the Narracuta Caves in South Australia, 4 hours away from Adelaide. It's a lovely region, but it can be treacherous. Watch out for holes the ground is pocked with. Known as pitfall traps, many of them are no wider than a coffee table. They're deep and plunge into the darkest of caverns. One of such caverns is called Victoria Fossil Cave, and it's a treasury that's been hiding the bones of around 45,000 animals for centuries. Some of the oldest bones belong to creatures far more terrifying than any animal you can encounter today. Those were the ancient Australian megafauna, huge beasts that roamed the continent during the Pleistocene epoch. During those, there were giant snakes, huge flightless birds, wombat-like creatures the size of a rhinoceros, and many others. One of the largest examples of the Australian megafauna scientists have discovered so far is the Diprotodon. That giant herbivorous creature was 10 feet long and 6.5 feet tall, and weighed more than 6,000 pounds, about as much as a small Asian elephant. Even though this terrifying beast didn't eat meat, it could have smashed other animals with its sheer weight. Scientists have found the remains of hundreds of such creatures all over Australia, so it's safe to say that no other animal from that time or in that location was larger than this giant. Despite its creepy appearance, the Diprotodon was a relative to the modern-day wombat, and those are known to sometimes pounce humans. The Diprotodon had toes that pointed inward and were well suited for digging burrows. On the other hand, Diprotodon was a giant, and it was unlikely that it used to do so. It was likely a trait it had inherited from its smaller burrowing ancestors, or it could have used its claws to search for roots. This theory is supported by the fact that the animal's pouch was facing backward. It prevented any dirt from collecting inside while the creature was digging. Since this animal was so big, it didn't have to worry much about predators. Up until 60,000 years ago, when the first humans appeared on the continent, full-grown Diprotodons only had to look out for creatures like the quincana. Measuring in at a whopping 20 feet long, the quincana was a land crocodile. It lived in Australia from around 20 million to 40,000 years ago. It disappeared along with most other mega creatures of the last ice age. It's thought to be the result of the first humans coming to the continent. Even though the quincana was extremely fast and dangerous, it was possible that this creature got out-competed by human hunters who took all available prey. Unlike modern crocodiles that are mainly aquatic, that mighty beast was a land dweller. Scientists figured it out by studying the quincana's legs. They were able to support and carry the body clear off the ground. It means there was no escape for ancient people once the quincana spotted them. Modern crocodiles can only push themselves along on their bellies. Such an adaptation allowed the quincana to chase its prey for long periods of time, exhausting it in the process. Another creepy feature of this ancient monster was its teeth. Aquatic crocs have conical teeth. Those are great for gripping and holding on to prey underwater. But quincana had knife-like teeth, ideal for slicing soft-bodied animals like, mammals. Another Australian monster, Thylacoleo, wasn't all that large, but it didn't make it any less terrifying. It was still among the top predators and the biggest carnivorous animals in Australia. This creature was a true oddity of nature, even by prehistoric standards. First, its teeth resembled not those of a regular predator, but those of a rodent. Its front incisors were enlarged, taking the place of canines. Premolars were also shaped like blades. They were used for cutting flesh and bone. At first, scientists thought that Thylacoleo used those teeth to eat nuts and fruits. But later, a study showed that the use of such teeth was better suited on necks and spines. Uh-oh. The jaws of this ancient creature were immensely powerful. A 220-pound Thylacoleo had a bite force similar to that of a present-day 550-pound lion. It means that the animal could easily bring down prey much larger than itself. Then there was Thylacoleo's tail. It had strong muscles which provided the animal with the ability to use the tail as support when tackling large prey. The Thylacoleo had retractable claws, and this feature is very uncommon among marsupials. It allowed the animal to keep its razor-sharp hooks from getting blunt and could help it get a better grip on its prey. Scientists are quite sure that, like today's leopards, the Thylacoleo could climb trees and jump on other animals from above. It was done so fast and stealthily, they never knew what hit them. The creature's rear feet support this theory. The first toe there was reduced, but the foot had a rough pad like what modern-day possums have. It allowed them to have a better grip while climbing. Right after scientists found the first skull of the Meliolania, this animal was classified as a lizard. That's why its name translates to small groomer. But after they discovered more complete fossils, it turned out that the Meliolania was a giant turtle. But that's not all. It was one of the largest land turtles to ever have existed. The main reason researchers initially believed the creature to be a lizard was the fact that its skull was adorned with a series of spikes. It's something the modern-day horned lizard can boast. But even after discovering the true nature of the Meliolania, scientists still don't know how to properly catalog it. It might have been a creature that folded its neck under its spine, or it could have folded it to the side. Beside those defensive mechanisms on its head, the Meliolania was also equipped with a spiked tail, which was probably used to prevent predators from attacking the animal from behind. Most species of the Meliolania disappeared around 2,000 to 3,000 years ago because of humans who hunted them to extinction in both Australia and on the surrounding islands. It took around 2 centuries for these turtles to go extinct in that region of the globe. The Megalania was a giant Australian lizard that existed at the end of the Pleistocene epoch. It looked like a Komodo dragon and the Australian monitor lizard, which are both believed to be Megalania's closest living relatives. Fossils tell us that the ancient animal was anywhere from 15 to 26 feet in length. Ow! The youngest fossil remains of this ancient Australian monitor lizard date back to about 50,000 years ago. The first indigenous settlers must have encountered Megalania, which led to the lizard's extinction. Originally, scientists thought that the Megalania was the only member of the genus Megalania, but these days it belongs to the genus Varanus, which means that the prehistoric creature is closely related to other Australian monitor lizards. Our next giant creature on our list was once dubbed an ostrich on steroids. I mean, look at it. It was the last of the thunderbirds to go extinct in Australia. The Genyornis lived on the continent at the same time as early humans. They might have coexisted for 15,000 years or so before the huge bird eventually disappeared. This theory has some proof. The bird's fossils found along with human artifacts. Some cave paintings also depict flightless birds similar to the Genyornis in size and shape. Although it wasn't the largest bird in Australia, the goose-like creature was still as tall as a grown-up man and weighed around 550 pounds. Even a modern-day ostrich can be dangerous if it feels threatened. Imagine meeting its giant prehistoric relative. Scientists are still arguing about its diet. Many believe the creature was an herbivore, but there's still a chance that the Genyornis was a partial scavenger. Its small, stubby wings and powerful hoof-like legs hint that the bird could have been a plant eater. But its huge beak and exceptionally deep lower jaw evoke suspicion. Such features are highly unusual in birds. From giant spiders to venomous snakes, we all get freaked out by Australian creatures. Yeah, me too. But newly discovered fossils show that things were way more dangerous 120 million years ago, when this land was completely ruled by massive razor-clawed megaraptors. Yeah, I'm glad I wasn't around then. These dinosaurs were about 26 feet long and walked on two legs, just like the famous T-Rex. They were fast, fierce hunters, with a superpower: their hug. Yep, their massive, muscular forearms had huge curved claws, perfect for grabbing and holding onto prey. Uh-oh. They would wrap their arms around their poor victims, just like a hug, and trap them with no chance of escape. And even though their teeth were quite small, they were still sharp enough to rip through flesh. The first time we heard about megaraptors was in the late 90s, when a paleontologist discovered their fossils in the region of Patagonia, Argentina. Since then, no one has ever found a complete skeleton, only fragments. But probably the most important one yet was uncovered in Australia at the beginning of this year. Researchers were exploring Victoria's stunning coastline when they stumbled upon megaraptor fossils. First, they spotted bones from its lower legs and a few vertebrae washed up on the beach. Even though they were working with just a couple of fragments, a deeper analysis confirmed that these belonged to a megaraptor. And not just any megaraptor, it was the oldest one ever discovered. This discovery gets even more exciting because it adds weight to the theory that these dinosaurs might have originated in Australia. But we already knew that they roamed the land down under since early 2023, when researchers found the top of a megaraptor skull in the country. So let's rewind a bit. We first found their remains in Argentina, right? Right. But then, years later, researchers found fossils of the same family of dinosaurs on the other side of the world, in Australia. If the ones in Oceania were older, how did these creatures end up in South America? Of course, they didn't fly there. They didn't cross continents by swimming either, although there is a theory that they could swim. Remember, we're talking about the dinosaur era, which happened millions of years ago. And back then, Australia and Argentina were actually pretty close. Basically, they were one. Both lands were part of the supercontinent known as Gondwana, and they were connected through Antarctica. Wait, but wasn't this path freezing? I mean, yeah, these dinos had to pass through Antarctica to get to their destination, but they weren't freezing their tails off. This all happened during the mid-Cretaceous period, when the weather was super warm. Back then, the poles were covered in plants, not ice. So let's just say they took full advantage of the good weather to make the crossing. Now, about 180 million years ago, Gondwana started to break apart. At some point, Australia drifted away from the supercontinent, cutting it off from other landmasses, including South America. That's why the same dinosaurs showed up in completely different parts of the world. Mystery solved. Now, let's get back to that recent discovery. The researchers didn't just find a few traces of megaraptors on the beach. In total, they uncovered 250 dinosaur bones at the site, but only 5 of them were really important. They belonged to 3 different species of dinosaurs that, as it turns out, all lived in Victoria at the same time. So yeah, we've already talked about those first 2 bones. They were from the megaraptor. Next, we have a shin bone from a Unexplained. That's my best shot at pronouncing it. It's a dino also known as the southern raptor. This is a type of dromaeosaur with a long snout. And the last 2 shin bones of different sizes came from a Carcharodontosaurus, whose name means shark-toothed lizard. This one is a particularly big deal for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's the first evidence that this species lived in Australia. And number 2, it was small, and that is pretty surprising since we've always thought of this species as being massive. Fossils found in Argentina, for example, show this dinosaur reached a length of about 36 feet. But the one in Australia was much smaller, measuring only around 6 to 10 feet long. And that's still plenty big. Basically, what we're saying is that the way predators were ranked in these 2 parts of the world was completely different. In South America, Carcharodontosaurs grew to massive T-Rex-sized giants, towering over megaraptors and dominating the landscape. But in Australia, it was the complete opposite. There, huge, powerful megaraptorids roamed the land alongside smaller Carcharodontosaurs, So the predator dynamic was different, and all of this just shows how unique the ecosystem in Victoria was back then. Although isolated dinosaur bones have been found in Western and South Australia, most of the fossils come from the eastern part of the country, like Queensland. And there, researchers dug up something really rare – a well-preserved dinosaur skull. The study shows that this bone belonged to the fourth discovered specimen of Titanosaur. This group includes those massive long-necked dinosaurs. They look like the Brachiosaurus, but some of them were even bigger, reaching 120 feet long. The skull, discovered in 2018, belongs to this guy, whose pronunciation is above my pay grade, and the research points out that it roamed the Earth around 98 million years ago. Thanks to this find, scientists were able to recreate for the very first time what its face might have looked like. Probably after checking out the illustration, they thought, hey, it looks a lot like its cousin. They were talking about another species of Titanosaur, this other unpronounceable guy. And guess where they used to live? Yep, in Argentina. So, this research also supports the theory that dinosaurs crossed between South America and Australia during the mid-Cretaceous period. Now, this wasn't the only secret buried in Queensland, though. In 2024, researchers working there discovered the fossilized remains of a new species of pterosaur, about 100 million years old. These creatures were the first vertebrates that could actually fly, existing alongside dinosaurs. They were massive, powerful predators, with wingspans of up to 36 feet. But these remains belong to a new species within the pterosaur group, which they have named Hakuna Matata, or something similar. Compared to their cousins, they were on the smaller side, with a wingspan of about 15 feet. Still, that's bigger than a snowy albatross, the largest flying bird we have today. This species of pterosaurs were terrifying beasts, flying over the ocean to hunt for prey. Once they spotted their victim, they'd snap open their 60-centimeter jaws, filled with sharp spike-like teeth, and, well, I guess there was no escaping that. The last incredible discovery we're talking about today also comes from Queensland. For over 20 years, students walked past a plain-looking rock at Biloela State High School completely unaware that it held 66 dinosaur footprints, and they date back about 200 million years. These prints were made by a group of these Latin-named guys. They were small dinosaurs with 3 toes on each foot, and it seems like they were all over Queensland around that early Jurassic period. The rock they found at the school worked like a snapshot, giving us a better idea of what these dinosaurs were like and how they behaved. After taking a closer look, researchers found that the footprints came from 47 individual dinosaurs. This group was probably walking along or maybe crossing a waterway when their footprints got marked in the white clay. And the study also discovered that they were likely moving at less than 4 miles per hour at the time. So we only discovered those marks in Australia. But fossils of the same species found in other countries showed that they had these long legs, a big chunky body, short arms, and this tiny head with a beak. But honestly, they don't sound as scary when you realize they only ate plants. Whew. Now this bad boy was the size of a husky and could maybe pass for one, except it didn't have any fur and was a top predator with extra long blade-like canine teeth. Ooh, charming. Meet the earliest known saber-toothed animal to have ever lived. It roamed the Earth well before the dinosaurs. Scientists made the description of this creature based on its fossils found on the Spanish island of Majorca in the Mediterranean Sea. About 200 million years ago, none of us were around then, the very first true mammals appeared, and they lived right alongside the dinosaurs. But if we trace the family tree of mammals even further back, we'll find an ancient group called Therapsids. They didn't look like mammals we have today, but they had some key features that would eventually help define mammals. For example, Therapsids had special openings on the sides of their skulls for jaw muscles, and parts of their jaw bones would later evolve into the tiny middle ear bones that all mammals, including you, have today. So, the new discovery is what might be the oldest known Therapsid fossil, The fossil, which doesn't have an official species name yet, belongs to a group called Gorgonopsians. Those guys are more closely related to mammals than they are to any other living animals. Some of them were as small as cats, and others were as massive as polar bears. Gorgonopsians had some very mammal-like traits, like different types of teeth for different jobs. But unlike mammals, these ancient predators kept replacing their teeth, even their giant saber-like canines, over and over during their lives. Hey, that would be handy. Until now, the oldest Gorgonopsian fossils we knew about were around 265 million years old. But this new fossil is even older, dating back between 270 and 280 million years. The find was super detailed and complete, including its sharp knife-like fangs, part of its jaw, pieces of its spine, ribs, tailbones, and toe bones, plus most of one of its back legs. Even though the creature's skull wasn't complete, the scientists think it was about 7 inches long, and the animal itself would have been around the size of a medium-large dog, weighing between 66 and 88 pounds. But other than that, it didn't really look much like a dog. Even though it had some lizard-like features, calling it a lizard dog is totally wrong. Mammals and reptiles do share a super ancient ancestor from about 320 million years ago, but their evolutionary paths split a long time ago. When the newly found creature was alive, the island of Majorca was right in the middle of the gigantic supercontinent Pangaea. Back then, this area went through super wet and super dry seasons. Scientists have always wondered if major moments in mammal history happened in tropical places like this, but we just didn't have the right fossils to prove it. Now, with the discovery of the oldest known Gorgonopsian in Majorca, the missing pieces of the puzzle are coming together. It looks like some huge steps in mammal evolution could have happened in low-latitude environments we haven't explored much yet. The so-called gap in the fossil record might just be because paleontologists weren't looking in the right spots. Our hero of the day wasn't the only cool guy rocking the planet before dinos settled in. Over 500 million years ago, the weirdest predators to have ever existed ruled the oceans. The name is a bit tricky to pronounce, so I'm not going to. Okay, it's Anomalocaris, but it just literally means unusual shrimp. This creature looked nothing like anything alive today. Scientists think it was the first true apex predator, the orca of its time. Anomalocaris was massive for its era, as it grew up to 3 feet from its sharp grabbing arms to the tips of its tail fins. For a while, everyone thought trilobites were its go-to meal, but new research shows it wasn't strong enough to crack open trilobite armor. So instead, it was a speedy, agile hunter with awesome vision, and it often picked off soft-body animals that zipped through the open water. Now, another really cool creature from pre-dino times is a fish that could walk on land. Tiktaalik lived in marshy rivers that looked a lot like today's Amazon rainforest. It could grow up to 9 feet long, and it found its prey in rivers and inlets like a modern-day freshwater crocodile. It had a flexible neck and even some early versions of lungs, and thanks to them, it could survive both in water and out of it. Why fish like Tiktaalik started moving toward land about 395 million years ago is still a bit of a mystery. Around that time, the ancient supercontinent called Gondwana was drifting closer to the land that would become North America. This slow movement created lots of shallow, swampy habitats, which were perfect places for crocodile-like animals to thrive. Plus, these areas were near the equator, so they were warm and tropical. But there wasn't a lot of food waiting for them on land, so maybe they moved there for safety reasons. There were fewer predators and better spots to lay eggs there compared to the water. Creatures first adapted to living in open water, then shallow water, then marshes and river edges, and only after a long, slow transition did they finally step fully onto land. Now, how about a millipede the size of a small car and weighing as much as a large dog? This beauty lived over 300 million years ago in what is now England. Back then, during the Carboniferous period, Earth's atmosphere had way more oxygen, over 26%, compared to today's 21%. Scientists used to think the high oxygen levels were the only reason these creatures could get so big. But back then, they found a new fossil from a time when oxygen wasn't that much higher than today. They discovered it purely by accident when a boulder split just right and revealed one of the most complete and largest giant millipede specimens ever. This one could have lived not just in swampy areas, but also in open woodlands filled with tasty seeds, nuts, and maybe even small animals. There's a chance that this beast wasn't a slow, plant-munching crawler, but a predator that would snap up whatever it could find. After dominating the Earth for about 45 million years, the giant millipedes eventually vanished. Probably the reptiles pushed them out, clearing the way for the age of the dinosaurs. Now, in case you ever wondered what would happen if you crossed a polar bear with a saber-toothed cat, here's the answer. This guy ruled the southern ecosystems after migrating 7,000 miles across the supercontinent Pangaea around 252 million years ago. It had a tough skin like a rhino's and massive canines, perfect for tearing away huge chunks of meat, and it was an excellent runner. Once it got to its new home in what is now South Africa, it replaced a whole group of local predators. But its glory didn't last long, as closer to the end of the Permian period, massive volcanic eruptions made the weather patterns change and wiped out about 90% of all species. And because top predators are usually big, slow to grow, and not super common, they often vanish among the first when massive extinction events hit. And that's how our guy here went extinct. Our final creature of the day was a dragonfly that lived around 300 million years ago and had a wingspan of over 2 feet, 6 long, spiny legs, and huge, bulging eyes. Mokele-Mbembe. This 4-winged giant is most likely the largest flying insect that ever lived, and it easily outsizes today's dragonflies, which are its distant relatives. Like modern dragonflies, Mokele-Mbembe like to hang out in open areas near ponds and slow-moving streams. But unlike today's dragonflies, it wasn't just catching tiny bugs. This guy was likely the top predator in these open spaces. It used the spines on its legs like a flying trap to snatch prey out of the air, including other flying insects, small amphibians, and even lizard-like creatures. Scientists found the first fossils of Mokele-Mbembe in 1880 in the coal-rich rocks in France. The fossils were incredibly well preserved and showed off the detailed vein patterns in their wings. Scientists think Mokele-Mbembe grew so huge because it didn't have much competition from vertebrates, and the air back then, during the Carboniferous period, had a lot more oxygen than it does today. Now, if Earth's history were a movie, we humans would only take up the last second of the end credits. Our planet has been around for about 4.6 billion years, but our human story began about 300,000 years ago in Africa. Now our ancestors had some wild adventures in nature. They could have run into creatures so big they'd make today's elephants look like puppies. The woolly mammoth is a pretty famous animal, sure. His cousin, though, the Columbian mammoth, not so much. This giant used to roam places from Canada all the way down to Mexico. Unlike the furrier woolly mammoths, which hung out in colder places, these animals had shorter hair, resembling huge elephants. They also had incredibly large tusks, like 12 feet worth of spiraling, sturdy tusks. And they weren't just for show, they came in handy when facing predators. That includes our ancestors. If you think about sloths these days, you're picturing these adorably slow creatures. They couldn't possibly be in your list of most dangerous animals. Well, their grandparents might have. For starters, we call them ground sloths, and they vary a lot in size. Some were as big as rhinos, and others, like the Megatherium, were as colossal as elephants. Imagine seeing a 20-foot-long sloth which doesn't mind chewing on some meat every now and then, at least in theory. Ever heard of Bigfoot? Well, our next animal kind of looks like him, but is a distant cousin to orangutans. Meet Gigantopithecus, the largest primate to ever call our planet its home. Standing tall at 10 feet and weighing more than 600 pounds, these animals were amazing to look at in real life. Unlike Bigfoot, they weren't constantly hiding. In fact, it's believed they were peaceful and gentle creatures. Sadly, they faded away about 100,000 years ago, mainly because their food sources slowly became unavailable. Those lush, fruity forests they called home eventually turned into dry grasslands. Next on our list is the cave hyena. Weighing a chunky 250 pounds and standing 3 feet tall, these beasts were as long as a grown-up lying down. What's even more interesting about these creatures is that they loved hanging out in groups. A pack could be as big as 30 of these animals, which meant they could easily take on even the biggest, heaviest mastodons. Our ancient families would have needed to stay alert around these hungry specimens. Sadly for these hyenas, about 20,000 years ago, their numbers started going down. Soon enough, they completely disappeared from the planet. Quick pop quiz. What's called a tiger but isn't really one? It's the saber-toothed tiger. I mean, sure, they belong to the feline family, but they aren't technically tigers. First appearing around 42 million years ago, in July, I think, many of their kind were gone before we even showed up. However, early Americans might have bumped into a couple of specimens from this group. If that really happened, it would have been quite the encounter. Think of the biggest wild lion today or the hefty Siberian tiger. These big cats also had some incredible features hidden in their fur. They were good at sneaking around, hiding, and pouncing on mammoths bigger than themselves. Their bite wasn't that strong, but they could open their jaws wide, like twice as much as a lion. And although their teeth were a bit on the weak side, they had buff forearms to pin down their dinner, giving those big fangs a purpose. Not the kind of kitty you'd want to play with. Dire wolves made their debut about 250,000 years ago. They were like the gray wolves we know today, but a lot stronger. While wolves these days stretch out to about 6 feet and tip the scales at 170 pounds max, dire wolves were about 5 feet and about 150 pounds. Found all over North and South America, they had admirable jaws, biting nearly a third harder than their modern counterparts. Also, their favorite snack was horses. But just like many other majestic beasts of the past, they faded away around 10,000 years ago. Now, names can be deceiving. Take the American lion, for example. It's not really a lion, it's more of a panther's big cousin. The other part of the name is correct, though. They did live in America about 330,000 years ago. This feline was no lap cat either. They were at the top of the wildcat pyramid, weighing a colossal 772 pounds. That's like stacking 4 grown men on a scale. Even the mighty African lion would look a tad bit shy beside these beasts. With the muscle to take down a bison, you wouldn't want to accidentally interrupt their dinner. They parted ways with this planet around 11,000 years ago, right after the last ice age. Now, down in Australia, about 50,000 years ago, I wasn't around then, there lurked a relative of the Komodo dragon, the Megalania. Experts love to have debates on how big it was. Some say it stretched out to 23 feet. Others think it was just about 11 feet long. Either way, they were basically mega-sized Komodo dragons with a dangerous bite. If you think bears are already big and fluffy now, let's introduce the short-faced bear. While this big creature stood on its hind legs, it towered at 14 feet. With long limbs, they could outrun today's bears, hitting speeds up to 40 miles per hour. These ultra bears sadly disappeared around 11,600 years ago. Now imagine a crocodile. Okay, imagine that same crocodile, only supersized, with sporty legs, doing its thing in Australia about 1.6 million years ago. Well, say hello to the quincana. These crocs were extremely large, reaching 23 feet. And no, they weren't lazy river loungers. These creatures really loved spending time on land. They evolved to have strong legs for their chases and razor-sharp teeth designed for slicing, not gripping. When did we stop sharing beaches with them? About 40,000 years ago. The name elephant bird might not sound familiar, but try to picture a bird that stood tall as high as a basketball hoop at 10 feet and weighed as much as a small car, 1,500 pounds. Their eggs were equally huge, like 150 chicken eggs bundled up into one. Now, as amazing as these birds sound, there's a lot we still don't know about them. They're hard to study, as most extinct animals are. Still, some recent studies have given us some clues. Scientists have been examining ancient molecules from their fossilized eggshells. It's an awesome piece of evidence, since these birdie shells were thick, preserving precious DNA inside. Plus, there are tons of these eggshell fragments sprinkled all over Madagascar's beaches. Because of these findings, we now know these birds were herbivores and loved eating leaves and seeds. We also know the tiny kiwi bird is its closest living relative. Now, dodos were these amazing birds we also used to share the planet with. They're like distant cousins to ancient pigeons. To give you some perspective, imagine a chunky bird weighing about 50 pounds. Similar to chickens, turkeys, and ostriches, dodos were also the types of birds that couldn't fly. Their wings were small, and they had the muscle strength of, well, a wet noodle. Now, you might have heard the word dodo used as a name for creatures that aren't that bright. Don't get confused, though, by this name. These birds were in fact intelligent. Scientists were able to figure that out by studying their fossils. It turns out that they were good at smelling stuff, unlike most birds that are all about the visuals. These creatures aren't around for us to study anymore, but that might change. One evolutionary biologist is on a mission to fully understand these amazing ancient birds. On that note, she revealed that the dodo's DNA has been completely sequenced. There are even talks about potentially bringing dodos back to life. They would make a nice addition to the lovely beaches of Mauritius, the place they used to call home many, many years ago. If dinosaurs once ruled the Earth, it seems like we should stumble upon their bones everywhere. But we don't. Why is that? Aren't you curious? There's no conspiracy here. The truth is that the quest to find dino remains is much more complex than meets the eye. Yes, dinosaur bones are real, we found tons of them, and they've already been uncovered on every continent, despite many people arguing otherwise. And the uneven distribution of these prehistoric treasures is simply a quirk of nature. Turns out fossilization is an incredibly rare phenomenon. It only happens under specific conditions. When a dino bites the dust, the journey to fossilization begins. The carcass needs swift burial by sediment, followed by layers upon layers, creating a geological pressure cooker. Minerals sneak into the bones, morphing them into stone. This unique recipe predominantly occurs underwater, where sediments like sand and mud can gracefully cloak the fallen giants. Which is why dinos meeting their end above ground rarely end up as fossils. For example, we barely find any fossils of species who lived in the jungle, and especially in the mountains. Researchers reveal that many fossils arise from areas near lakes or rivers. Whether drowned before a flood or carried away by rain, these dinosaurs lucked out in fossil formation. These are the reasons why we don't discover dinos in every nook and cranny. The harsh reality is that we might never meet many dino species, all because of these limitations of fossilization. Around 71% of dinosaurs will never be discovered. We don't even know how many species we've lost due to unsuitable conditions. If we're super lucky, we might find some fossils of mountain dinosaurs in local rivers, but that's a very rare case. So yes, while dinosaurs graced the globe, all the fossils we found so far were due to great luck. Now, this makes you wonder how much dinosaurs lived in general. There are myths about them leading a tortoise-paced life. People believe that dinos were sauntering through centuries to achieve colossal sizes. Funny enough, the truth is exactly opposite. In reality, dinosaurs lived shortly and shone bright like rock stars. Unfortunately, once these animals hit the prime of reproduction, they often found themselves on the fast track to fossilization before reaching their full-size potential. What's interesting is that dinosaur life cycles align with the rhythm of trees. Perhaps you know that it's possible to determine how old the tree lived by its rings. It's true, each pair of light and dark rings equals 1 year of age. Like the rings tell us about trees, dinos' bones tell us about them. Researchers examine slices of bones under a microscope, analyzing different tissues to gauge growth rates. Thick rings mean rapid growth, and narrow ones mean a more leisurely pace. In the animal kingdom, bigger usually equals longer life. So, some people wonder whether big dinos actually live longer. Apparently so. Large sauropod dinosaurs, akin to ancient behemoths, likely took around 30 to 35 years to reach their colossal peak. Following that, they might have enjoyed a few more decades on the prehistoric stage. For smaller dinosaurs, like the nimble arthropods, life was a swift affair. They grew to their full size after around 4 to 5 years of life. But after a mere 3 to 4 years, these mini dinos, unless super fortunate, might have bid adieu. So it turns out many dinosaurs didn't live for hundreds of years. Most of them, even colossal ones, rarely marked even their 50s. It's a surprise if you compare them to today's giants like blue whales and elephants. These animals boast human life-like spans. Blue whales live for around 80 to 90 years, and many elephants make it to their 60s to 70s. And they're not as big as some dinosaurs. Yeah, it's a pity that they left our planet so early, and we don't have a chance to study so many of them. What's even sadder is that dinosaurs have been doomed from the beginning. Even if a random cosmic rock hadn't hit our planet, dinosaurs would still have gone extinct by today. The Chicxulub meteorite smashed into our planet 66 million years ago. For the record, it didn't actually destroy all the dinosaurs, only the non-avian ones. The rest became birds. Yep, some of these colossal creatures became tiny chickens and pigeons we see today. Guess they know what wolves might feel like. But even before that happened, the Earth was slowly preparing a catastrophe for them. Recent research shows that the era before the asteroid impact wasn't exactly a paradise. It was more like a brewing cauldron of environmental challenges. The scientists delved into the Deccan Traps, one of the largest volcanic regions in present-day West India. They came up with an innovative technique to study the past through volcanoes by measuring sulfur concentrations in rocks. That's how they learned that the Deccan Traps, spewing millions of cubic miles of molten rock, contributed to global climate shifts. Over 100,000 years before the infamous Chicxulub meteor struck, global temperatures might have plummeted by several degrees. This sudden drop was most likely triggered by sulfur emissions from the Deccan Traps. And this, in turn, led to pretty wild, unpleasant climate conditions. The Earth ended up experiencing volcanic winters. This made life super challenging for flora and fauna and set the stage for the eventual dinosaur extinction. So, even if there was no asteroid, dinos wouldn't survive for too long. For a long time, scientists have been arguing whether it was the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs or the volcanic activity. Finally, technology is developing, and we can use it to answer this question. An AI system developed by researchers offers its own perspective. Using over 100 processors fed with geological and climatic data, the AI explored the fossil records and over 300,000 possible scenarios to find the truth. And, according to the machine, the volcanic theory is far more plausible. It told the scientists that the climate changes required for a mass extinction were likely caused by the Deccan Traps alone, even without the asteroid impact. The volcanic eruptions coincided with the Cretaceous-Paleogene boundary, starting 300,000 years before the asteroid, and it continued for an extended period. This raised some questions about human versus AI judgment. Some scientists expressed skepticism and talked about the AI's potential bias. But the researchers who led the project are excited about the novelty of their method and its potential to explore other periods of Earth history. However, it will likely take some time for humans to build trust in AI. We already mentioned that non-avian dinosaurs survived this apocalyptic event. For some reason, neither volcanoes nor an asteroid wiped out everything on our planet. Many animals survived, evolving into mammals, and many plants continued to flourish. Plants went through this even better than animals, actually. A catastrophe bid farewell to about 75% of Earth's species. not to count all the individual losses. Yet, botanical wonders survived. Around 78% of our plant species owe their existence to their persistent ancestors. Unfortunately, plants don't turn into fossils as easily as animals do, and we already know that this process isn't quick or common either. So the researchers had to turn to evolutionary trees. They analyzed up to 73,000 surviving plant species. The findings revealed a remarkable narrative of evolution and dominance. Turns out, after the Great Extinction, these sneaky plants seized the opportunity, just like mammals who rose to prominence after the dinosaur era. Major orders, like those of mint, magnolia, and orchids, not only coexisted with dinosaurs, but thrived beyond the extinction. The secret to their success lies in how they could adapt for pollination. They didn't care whether they were pollinated by wind or insects or anything else, basically eating resources from anywhere they could find. Thanks to this awesome adaptability, which scientists call flower power, their legacy lives and flourishes today. Well, it seems we got dinosaurs completely wrong. Plus, the movies created an image of them that's hard to get out of the head now. You know what I'm talking about? Dinosaurs as giant lizards. I mean, lizards are cool. There's a type of lizard found in the streams of Costa Rica that can stay under the water for up to 16 minutes. They create a pocket of air at the top of their snout and breathe exhaled air while submerged. So-called horned lizards can spout blood out of their eyes, shooting it up to 6 feet. Poor lizard has to do it when it gets closer to the mouth of its attacker, since this bad taste makes a predator change their mind and go after some more delicious bites. Then there's the basilisk lizard that can run over water while making its escape from bigger animals in the rainforests of Central America. They can do that for short distances, but still, it gets to rear up and rely on flaps of skin on the toes of its hind legs to have more surface area. Many types of lizards have had to develop such unusual adaptations, so they didn't become an easy, quick snack for snakes, coyotes, hawks, foxes, and other big animals going after them. They wouldn't have to do it if they had some giant cousins that would protect them, like dinosaurs. But even though they look like gigantic, scary lizards in the movies, it's not what you would see if you had the chance to go back to the dino age. You'd have to be aware and run if you saw feathery creatures instead. Feathers don't sound that scary because birds are the only animals alive today that have them. But millions of years ago, it was a different story. Some of the most fearsome dinosaurs were covered in feathers too, of different shapes, sizes, and colors. For example, check this fella, a cousin of the famous T-Rex. It was a scary predator that weighed 1.5 tons and was covered in a shaggy coat of filaments, known as protofeathers. These feathers were not used for flying, but to stay warm or attract mates. Or take a velociraptor, for example. For so long, we've believed it's a sleek predator with the skin of a lizard. But it turns out it was a much smaller, colorful creature covered in feathers, like some sort of bird. Many of their dino relatives had pretty long feathers all over their forearms, together with downy feathers that were spread across the rest of the body. This works for most of the meat-eating dinosaurs, or so-called theropods. There were tiny ones with a tail fan full of feathers, or those with shiny feathers in a mix of colors. It was similar to a hummingbird. Maybe it wouldn't be that scary to face dinosaurs after all. Some of the fossils researchers found are well preserved. In combination with modern techniques they use to study these fascinating creatures, they found out dinosaurs came in different colors. Archaeologists found some fossilized feathers together with fossils of melanosome structures. Those are pigments that gave them gray, brown, and black colors, like Anchiornis, whose body was almost entirely black. It's reminiscent of a bird with wings and fluffy tail feathers on his hind legs, together with a pretty long tail that could fan out. This fella had white stripes along its wings too. It also had a brown head crest. This one was perhaps there as a display or used to communicate with other anchiornis dinosaurs. And check out this one. It also had a bristly tail and different markings on its body. Thanks to the fossils they found, researchers have been able to reconstruct the appearance of this dinosaur, giving it so many details. Not only did dinos look like birds, but they also behave similarly to them. For example, they sat on their nests to protect their eggs and most likely used their feathers for displays. There was a discovery in Canada that revealed one type of dinosaur had a fleshy crest on its head, like a rooster's comb. Scientists think this crest was likely used as a way to attract a mate or show off to other dinosaurs. Then, there's the scariest of them all in the dinosaur kingdom, the T-Rex. Can you imagine this one in a birdie version? Also, you may have seen pictures of T-Rex with its big sharp teeth and its jaws wide open, kind of always ready to bite into its prey. But these images might be completely wrong. Some recent research tells us these top predators might have had something that we take for granted in almost all land animals today: lips. Now think about it. When you look at a crocodile or an alligator, you don't see any lips covering their teeth. So everyone has always assumed that their prehistoric relatives, theropod dinosaurs, were the same way. Well, not quite. Researchers looked at fossilized dinosaur skulls and compared them to modern reptiles, and found out these dinosaurs likely had soft tissue around their mouths that functioned like lips. Scientists learned this while studying small passageways in the upper jaws of dinosaur skulls, something called foramina. Foramina allows blood vessels and nerves to reach the soft tissues around the mouth. In lipped reptiles like lizards, these foramina are arranged in a line along the edge of the jaw near the teeth. Scientists examine the enamel of the teeth too. When enamel dries out, it wears down more easily. The researchers found that the side of alligator teeth that is continuously exposed erodes more like the wetter side facing the inside of the mouth. However, in theropods like T-Rex, the teeth have an even wear pattern. This tells us teeth were kept covered and moist. Based on this, scientists believe theropods with long, sharp teeth, like T-Rex, could also close their mouths with their teeth inside. The teeth of theropods and monitor lizards are similar in size, and monitor lizards can close their mouths completely. Therefore, it's likely that theropods also had lips that allowed them to fully close their mouths. However, it's not known if they wore lipstick. Interestingly, the study also revealed a neat row of jaw foramina in a pretty cool extinct early cousin of crocodilians. Also, lips may have been present in the earliest archosaurs, a group of reptiles that gave rise to dinosaurs and crocodilians. Now, this might not seem like a big deal, but it truly changes how we think about how these dinosaurs ate. If they had lips, it's possible that they could have controlled their bites more precisely, and maybe even chewed their food instead of just tearing it apart. Some still believe differently, saying T-Rex and other theropods had flat scales like crocodiles all the way down to the edges of their jaws. So I guess the mystery of dinosaur lips continues. Now you might be wondering, did sauropod dinosaurs like the titanosaur have feathers too? Some scientists believe all dinosaurs, including sauropods, had feathers. Just as you can see all mammals have at least some hair. But big mammals like elephants have limited hair. So it's possible that sauropods didn't have many feathers. Since feathers are something you'll stumble upon in a fossilized shape, the chances of finding those of sauropods or similar dinosaurs are definitely lower. Plus, there's a chance big dinosaurs that lived in warm weather didn't have feathers at all. Many of these feathered dinosaur fossils have been found in China. These fossils have helped us understand the transition from feathered dinosaurs to birds. Because birds could be the only animals that survived and are around today that are directly related to dinosaurs. Ooh, I wonder what happened here. It could be that some kinds of theropods started hiding in trees more while searching for food and protection, so their bodies evolved to become even smaller to survive harsh conditions and dangerous predators lurking after them. But still, it's a transition from the most incredible predator the animal kingdom has seen to squawking chickens. Talk about how evolution mostly moves animals forward. Hey, stop it! I didn't mean it!